Hey guys, what's going on? It's If You Have to Pick Three. It's Matt.
And it's Zach.
If you haven't joined us for the show before, we are given a top three of some particular category.
Usually music related. Typically.
But we each pick a top three, and then we fight out for a final top three, and then there you go. We have our top three.
What a great summation. Well, for this particular episode, I mean, you probably saw the image. You probably know what you're getting into, but let us explain anyway. We'd be rude hosts if we didn't. David Bowie. I mean, when you think about one-of-a-kind artists, there's no one like David Bowie. He is such an influential person on all of music. It's been over 5 years now that we've lost him, and the loss still impacts us all. And as we're going into 2022, we thought, you know what? I think it's about time we geek out over David Bowie, especially considering there's a lot of milestones that happened this year. I mean, first off, in January, he would have been 75 years old. That alone is pretty astonishing. Also, his landmark album, Ziggy Stardust, turns 50 in 2022. And then also 2 of the 3 Berlin Trilogy albums, Low and Heroes, turns 45. Also, his self-titled debut, which granted a bit of an under the radar, that turns, holy crap, am I doing my math right? 55 years old also? Holy crap.
Yeah.
A lot of milestones this year for David Bowie.
We'll call it 54, 55.
Yeah. Well, it's insert number. Anniversary. I think it's long overdue for us to talk about David Bowie, just because, like I said, he's so influential. The Chameleon of Rock, really, if you think about it.
It's really kind of weird that we haven't done this yet.
Yeah. I mean, we've mentioned him in a few past episodes if you have to pick 3, like I think in odd collaborations, people who've covered his songs, but yeah, I mean, he literally has influenced so many different genres of pop and rock. Like I mentioned, the Chameleon of Rock and Roll. Only a few artists can you define their eras of music by their personas. The Aladdin Stone or the Thin White Duke era. Like
there was, and this is what I was going down when I was going over my list is, one thing about this particular episode is that you're going to have a very massive discrepancy between anybody who listens to this, because everybody's going to identify differently with Bowie. Mm-hmm. And on one of my picks, I know I'm going to probably go very off what everybody else considers to be the best or one of the best of Bowie, because it's from an era that I don't think a lot of people liked Bowie from.
Yeah, that's fair too. And you can even have some people who claim this is the only best era. And there's some that are like, no, I got into him in the 80s. I got into him even in the 90s during his period when, you can argue that in the 90s is when he passed the baton to Trent Reznor on that tour of Nine Inch Nails and Bowie. And that's what makes Bowie so special, that even during his times when maybe he wasn't so commercially appealing, his influence was still undeniable. His presence was still undeniable. And for him to be so influential in so many different genres too, from gritty rock like Nine Inch Nails to even pop like Madonna, who inducted him into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in the 90s. Before we get into it, first, do we want to lay down any ground rules? Any songs we want to say that they're off limits, don't bother picking them?
We talked about this in another episode, and I think it was the Odd Collaborations episode. Maybe. We've done so many episodes at this point.
And if you go to any streaming platform of your choice, you can listen to them all.
Exactly. But we talked about the collaboration between Freddie Mercury and David Bowie for Under Pressure.
Oh, you mean Queen and David Bowie's Under Pressure? We talked about that when we named the best Queen songs, Under Pressure.
Yes. And I think that for this, that's off the table.
Yeah. Mainly because, and this is going to be, we can do a whole half an hour debating this, on whether or not Under Pressure is a Queen song featuring David Bowie, is a David Bowie song featuring Queen, or is it literally a pure duet. I always associate it as a Queen song with David Bowie, but it's funny. Once in a while, I'll be hanging out with someone who goes, wait, that was a Queen song? I thought it was David Bowie. And I'm like, oh, that's weird that you would think that, but okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, just for that sheer confusion alone, I think that's off the table. Plus, I think we've said it in the past too, that this is probably one of the finest vocal performances, just period.
It's a great song. Actually, probably one of the best duets.
Yes. So
hands down.
I think, that's off the table. But
another topic that we surprisingly haven't really gone into.
No.
Maybe future episode.
Let us know in the comments below.
Click. And also, before we get into the nitty gritty of our list, a huge special thank you and shout out to Lucky 13 Beard Co.
If you haven't checked them out yet, we've been pushing them pretty hard recently because, well,
What?
We have our
What
own.
are you talking about?
We have our own beard oil with Ed and the guys over at Lucky 13. It's the Lemmy. It smells incredible. It makes you feel really good when you put it on. And I've gotten a ton of compliments over the holidays, just having it on around, a couple different people who I haven't seen in a while. And they all loved it and, asked me, what are you wearing? And
they suddenly wanted to actually hang out with you.
Yeah, I know,
It was
right? It's
weird.
like I got groomed or something.
Yeah.
Like you can't wear pajamas and, on the bottom anymore when you're going out in public. But anyway.
Well, I don't agree with that, but continue.
But, just having it on and having people smell it, it smells amazing from what everybody's saying. They want to know how they could get their hands on it. So, I let them know it's the beard oil. If you go to Lucky13, the number, beardco.com, and it's right on the product page. It's the very first thing on there. It's the Lemmy. It smells so good. If you know anything Lemmy from Motorhead, it is pretty much him in a bottle in a good way.
In a good way.
not a bad way.
We promise it's actually appealing.
Oh, it's so good. It's tobacco, whiskey, cola, and leather, and it just smells.
It works so well.
It works so well. Ed knocked it out of the park on this one. If you haven't given any beard oil a try yet, this is the time to get in on it because we still have our code going on with him. EFP10 at checkout. You get 10% off of your order, and you get that off of, probably, I think, one of the best smelling beard oils that I've ever smelled, and I've been around them a lot, and I've tried a lot of them. And I'm not kidding just because it's ours, but it smells that good.
Amen.
So put in the cart, EFP10 at checkout, 10% off. You're going to love the way you smell. Lucky 13, the number, beardco.com. Get that 10% off.
Matthew.
Zach.
It's a new year.
It's a new year.
I'm a gentleman in a new year, and I'm going to let you go first.
All right. So new year, new Zach. I'm going first because you're... All right. Number one. I think this is probably one of the songs that we can agree on that I think is probably the first song that people really thought of Bowie doing something, I don't want to say worthwhile because, yeah, the first album was kind of meh, but the first real time that people took notice was on Space Oddity, and it's the quote-unquote title track because it's really a self-titled album, but the song Space Oddity, it's probably one of the most unique songs that you're ever going to hear, and I always have a hard time describing certain songs, and this is really one of them, because there really are no words to say what you're hearing. You just know that you're hearing something different and you're hearing something special. The only way that I can really equate this is at times it feels like Bowie is kind of channeling the Beatles on the White Album on both of the Revolution tracks. So people always associate the Beatles with Revolution number 9, that totally weird tripped out track that has just a whole bunch of noise. But then they also have a Revolution 1, and Revolution 1 is kind of like a pseudo song. It's not, it really is an unstructured thing, but it sounds good. And Bowie, he really kind of takes this whole psychedelic approach to Space Oddity, and it just reminds me of that. And also kind of going along with what this track actually is. It's kind of, I don't know if it really was meant to be like a big FU to space exploration at the time, because this song was banned. And for those people who are huge Bowie fans, I would love to know this because I couldn't get a great definitive answer on this. If this song was just banned on the BBC or if it was also banned in America, but it was banned because the whole idea of space exploration at the time was like this global phenomenon, and everybody was like, yeah, let's get to the moon, let's get to the moon. And then here comes David Bowie out with this song about, well, Major Tom floating around in a tin can in space and his demise. So because it was kind of anti-quote establishment on that front, it was banned, and I don't know where it was banned from, but still, it being banned, and it really was kind of ironic that it was banned too, because it was rushed out to be the background music to the moon landing. So it was kind of odd. It
was
really,
an oddity?
It was an oddity. There you go. It sold poorly at the time, but then by the time that, what was it, Ziggy Stardust came out in 1972, when it was reissued, it peaked at number 15 on the charts then. So he did gain more acclaim for this song after it was released, because of said bands, but people still took all of that trippiness in and saw that there was a lot of talent on this track from Bowie. So we're going to go with Space Oddity at number 1. No particular order, by the way.
Well, that's no fun, but go ahead.
All right. Number 2, we're going to go with the title track from the 77 album Heroes.
Also celebrating an anniversary.
Also celebrating that anniversary. So, like you mentioned earlier, this is part of his Berlin period. It was actually inspired, from my understanding, from his producer-engineer embracing his lover by the Berlin Wall, and it tells the tale of 2 lovers at the time. And what I didn't know, and going back through my research, that he actually performed this song in June of 87 at the Berlin Reichstag. I hope I said that right. In West Berlin. And he supposedly, this was one of the songs that was the catalyst to help bring down the Berlin Wall. And actually, on Bowie's death in January of 2016, the verified German Foreign Office Twitter tweeted out, quote, "Goodbye, David Bowie. You are now amongst #heroes. Thank you for helping bring down the wall." So they even admitted it. And they also put in a link, which is now dead, to the performance from the Berlin Wall. So it's really cool to even see the German government acknowledge that Bowie had a very significant performance with this song that helped bring down the wall. So if that's not significant and one of his best songs, I mean, everybody knows this song in one way or another. The Wallflowers famously covered it for the Godzilla soundtrack.
Was it for the Godzilla soundtrack? I remember some would argue that the cover became, really huge. I didn't realize it was for the Godzilla soundtrack.
It was for, I believe, I'm 99% sure it was for Godzilla. It was also, I think, in the movie The Replacements with Keanu Reeves.
That I also remember, but I thought the song came out. Sorry to interrupt, but I was just surprised. That soundtrack alone is full of surprises.
Oh, it is.
The Godzilla one.
I loved that soundtrack.
Not to go too down a rabbit hole.
And then also Motorhead and Lemmy covered it in the Undercovers album.
Yeah. Well, that song in particular's had a few different covers go around.
Right. But it means so many different things to so many different people. But I feel like this is, obviously it's on the list, so I think it's one of Bowie's best. So that's number 2. And I'll talk about it maybe more because I got like a couple of honorable mentions that...
Yeah, fair warning also, I have a bunch of honorable mentions as well.
We'll talk about the some of the other ones later on. And then the third one, and I thought about this one for a while, and I really couldn't figure out what to put here because there's so many different songs for so many different eras of Bowie. And then there was a few things that just made me immediately go to this song when I learned about it, because I've never been to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Spoiler.
You've never been to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
No.
Wow.
But when I learned
road trip.
Exactly. Maybe we'll do a podcast from there one day.
Oh, that would be lovely.
One thing that I learned about this particular song is that it's in a very interesting exhibit there called the 500 Songs That Shaped Rock and Roll. And from the 75 Young Americans album, we're going with Fame. So, as the kids nowadays would say, the song's got swagger. It's just a huge, over-the-top funk rock sound.
Is it any wonder?
And it was actually co-written with some vocals and acoustic guitar by John Lennon.
That's right. It's so funny, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because out of all the songs in David Bowie's catalog, I always thought it was astonishing that is the one. Because this is during a time period where John Lennon was kind of like going through a rebellious state, just like behind the scenes, and was hanging out with the Hollywood vampires, as Alice Cooper calls them, and just hanging out with Elton John, David Bowie, a bunch of glam rockers, just jamming with them. And it always surprised me that this was the song that he co-wrote with David Bowie.
I know, and it's also about their dissatisfaction and the troubles with fame and stardom. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, to go along with what you're saying, that only makes sense.
It absolutely does, yeah.
Now, Bowie, in this exhibit at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame that I mentioned, has 4 songs. This song is amongst songs like, and get ready for this list, Bohemian Rhapsody, Enter Sandman, Another Brick in the Wall, Sympathy for the Devil, Highway to Hell, Dream On, Good Vibrations, I Want to Hold Your Hand, Folsom Prison Blues. So you can see what type of company this song is in.
Which is very surprising. I mean, sorry, I'm not going to dive too much into your list, but yes, continue.
Oh, you can dive in as much as you
Well,
want.
no, that's surprising. Again, out of all the songs from Bowie, it's a great song. Actually, I don't even know why I would say it's surprising. I just wouldn't expect it.
Right. I mean, I didn't really think of Fame as being, before I started to do this list, I didn't think of it being that big of a song. I know I liked the song. I know that it was definitely like a big funk rock. Maybe if you listen to it in a different light, maybe one day you could think it's almost disco-y, but it's just got this big swag about it, and it's got this big, quote unquote, big swinging dick sound about it.
It was a big song,
yeah,
but I never guess how impactful it was.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's maybe a good word for it.
You never really figured that to be the song that Bowie is known for, because there's so many other songs. Like, everybody always talks about, like, Ziggy Stardust or Suffragate City and songs like that always overshadow like other things, because I guess they're more rock and roll sounding. And this is definitely that funk rock, like I said, maybe that disco sound, for the 70s that Bowie was in at the time. And with it being, I guess, in that type of company with those types of songs, that now it's like, and it's John Lennon that was a part of it. And there's just all of this, I guess, other criticism that goes into this song, that it's like, oh yeah, how could it not be one of his best songs? I had to put it on my list. Like I said, I always liked it. I always enjoyed it. There was, I think, a commercial years ago that used it, where I think it was one of the stock market things that had a guy riding on an elephant, and Fame was the song that the elephant was like strutting to.
Yeah.
And it always is one of those strutting songs. Like, I could see that, like,
it's also a song that when you hear it, you don't go, who sung that? Oh, that was David Bowie. Like, it's David Bowie.
Yeah.
When you hear it.
I could always picture John Travolta in Saturday Night Fever. If the Bee Gees didn't do that soundtrack, I could picture this being that song that he's like strutting to. But for now, those are my top three, because they could change at any point in time. Yeah,
I think that's another great like little precursor to add here, is that like it really, especially for my list, it could change tomorrow. It depends on my mood.
Right, because like we talked about, Bowie is just so much and did so much that whatever you're in the mood for.
Even a top 10 list wouldn't do him justice,
right.
I feel like. With that said, before I go into my three.
So, here, let me recap real quick.
Oh, go for it.
Space Oddity, 1. Heroes, 2. Fame, 3.
I also am going to just go ahead and just give a little pretense teaser here that Space Oddity, hands down, absolutely is going to be in the final 3.
Okay.
In fact, I was going to put that in my 3, but because you spared me and you did a beautiful job just discussing it, it will be in the final 3, but I'm going to name 3 other songs. One of my honorable mentions just got upgraded.
Okay.
So thank you for that. My first out of the 3, also in no particular order, is a song from 1971's Hunky Dory. It was right before Ziggy Stardust kind of catapulted him into mega stardom. He was still trying to like get a footing and wasn't really getting a lot of attention, but that particular album and this particular song really did kind of help create the blueprint for what we know David Bowie to be in the 70s at least. I also still remember when he passed away at the British Music Awards, Lord performed with his touring band and they chose this song, and it just really is it was a beautiful tribute to him. And I think, again, this song just captures who he was as an artist at that point. And it's just a great song. So my first pick, Life on Mars. My second pick, I was going to lean towards the song Changes, but I kind of felt like a lot of what I wanted to say about that goes with Life on Mars, so not going to do that. Spoiler alert, I already mentioned. I could go on and on about Ziggy Stardust and about that whole album, and how phenomenal it was. And at first I kind of wanted to lean towards Suffragate City because it's a great rock and roll song, but I actually think that the album's lead single better encompasses what he was, kind of similar to Life on Mars. And I'm talking about Starman. Of course, the chorus is kind of a parody play on Somewhere Over the Rainbow, but it goes to show how brilliant he was and that he was able to make it his own. It was just a beautiful tale of just this space alien rock star coming to Earth and just everyone being amazed by him. And it kind of just captured what the whole concept of the album was, in that here's a rock star coming down to grace us with his presence. He gets a little too close to the sun and burns out a little bit. And it's just a great song, from just the acoustic strumming to then the electric guitar solo. Again, it just finally it was almost an aha moment for him in a way that you can tell he finally felt the confidence in what he wanted to do. And I think Starman is just a great song. Some leading, you know what? Gonna lock it in. Second pick, Starman.
Stamp it,
seal it, send it out. And also go off again. I think that song, even more so than Ziggy Stardust and Suffragate City, like I mentioned, that electric guitar solo, great highlight of Mick Ronson's work with David Bowie. I mean, the two of them together just did some incredible work. And I think that song really did a great job of capturing that. Third pick. This one might ruffle some feathers because depending on who you ask, 80s David Bowie was a sellout, kind of just coasting on his name, depending on who you ask.
I have feelings on that.
And I'm not saying I even agree with that, hence my pick here. Mm-hmm. And I was going to go with a different song initially, but I was like, no. Just because I love that song doesn't mean that this song, which is definitely one of arguably his most poppy song, doesn't mean that was actually even more impactful. Kind of like similar to you talking about with Fame. This song, I would even say, is an even bigger left field change, but it highlights how even though he was going in a more accessible pop direction, it was still undeniably Bowie and how experimental it was. I'm talking, of course, about Let's Dance. It's weird to even say that out loud considering the depth of his whole catalog that I would choose such a poppy song, but it's a great 80s pop song. And at no point are you listening to this song going, oh man, Bowie's phoning it in. No, he is still giving it his all, and you could tell that he's having fun doing something different. And this whole album was different for him. I mean, it was produced by Nile Rodgers, and he wanted to purposely go in a more pop direction here and just play around with it and incorporate more dance and funk. And I also love how Stevie Ray Vaughan actually plays on this album and on this track in particular, because that's another weird, bizarre connection. Like Nile Rodgers, Stevie Ray Vaughan, and David Bowie walk into a bar. That sounds like an amazing joke, but instead they walked into a studio and created this album. You could just hear the fun that David Bowie's having on this song. And you can just hear how his vocal performance is just amazing on it. Put on your red shoes and dance. Like, it's just, it just shows how he, can take a pop, tune, a pop medley, and make it his own and make it undeniably Bowie. Sorry, kind of side tangent here. I'm the king of that. In Jersey City, New Jersey, in case you couldn't tell, there's this historic cemetery, and a group of people, to raise money to help maintain the cemetery, puts on a Halloween show in the cemetery where a bunch of musicians, either they're existing bands or they're a group of local musicians who get together and they form cover bands and they perform many sets of a particular artist, and they dress up as the artist, and it's like a big tribute concert show in a cemetery. And one year, it was actually right before Sandy hit, like literally the night before Sandy hit New Jersey.
Hurricane Sandy, by the way.
Hurricane Sandy, in case, not just a gal named Sandy.
She was a mean one, though.
She was mean. Oof. But the final act was a David Bowie tribute band. And I still vividly remember the moment that they played Just Dance. And by the way, the singer nailed David Bowie. He was phenomenal. The moment they played Just Dance and just seeing with the lights like flickering on and on at night and the whole cemetery of just people, crowded people dancing and just letting loose and having fun, it just stuck with me. And it just highlighted how great of a song that was and how it could just make you just forget all your troubles, forget what's going on in the outside world, and just enjoy that moment. It was just phenomenal. And whenever I hear that song, I just think back to that scene. You can argue that it influenced a lot of the indie rock bands that have incorporated more dance, like the post-disco dance elements to their work. I mean, I'm looking at bands like Arcade Fire, even LCD Sound System. I mean, you could argue that at least Arcade Fire's later stuff, that they were definitely more influenced by albums like Let's Dance, the more that they incorporated dance stuff. So, I mean, yeah, we talk about how it's a pop dance track, but let's not be fooled. There's a lot of rock elements to it as well. And it also showed that even after a full decade of experimenting with rock and in just like the alt and glam stuff, he could still change with the times, but then evolve the times as well.
Right. And that going back to what you said earlier is that some people felt like Bowie sold out. I don't think Bowie could ever really sell out. Bowie, up to this point, has been how much he can change and evolve with the times and still be genuine to himself and genuine to the music. Case in point, the entire Let's Dance album is proof of that. Bowie also changing from that psychedelic sound to a funk rock sound to this new wave-ish sound to his 90s sound. He never sold out. He always, like you just said, evolved with the times, changed with the times. So for anybody to say that Bowie is ever sold out, I think you're misunderstanding what selling out is. Because if you look at the streaming plays from Bowie's albums, a lot of Bowie's albums haven't hit like 1 million streams on particular songs. All of them will have like 500,000 or 300,000 streams, and it's Bowie just doing his own thing, whether or not it's popular or it makes sense. He's going to change and evolve with the time. So I just don't think that there's any real way that Bowie ever, quote, sold out.
That's fair. Amen.
So your 3 again?
My 3 again. Life on Mars, Starman, and Let's Dance. And with that, before I give you a proposal for a final 3, because I already have one in mind. Honorable mentions. I mean, I kind of already started to say Changes and Suffragate City, 2 amazing songs, kind of similar to what I was discussing with Starman and Life on Mars, respectively, from a lyrical and even just sonically perspective. Another one I really want to shout out, though, is one of my favorite David Bowie songs, Ashes to Ashes. Okay. I just absolutely, it kind of was the fine line between his glam, artsy, experimental part and him slowly transitioning more into the 80s dance elements. Actually, that song in particular has a great callback to Major Tom in its bridge outro. And it's a little bit more of a darker twist to even darker than what happened to Major Tom in Space Oddity. But I just always loved that chorus. Just perfect song. And it was tempting to make that into my final 3, but that's more of a personal choice. Also, Rebel Rebel. Great rock and roll song.
Yeah. And see, that's the thing about like doing a top or a top 3 or even honorable mentions. Like you're going to leave something out. Like I didn't even dive into the Diamond Dogs album at all when I was looking at this. And I know that there's a lot of great songs on there, like Rebel Rebel.
Yeah.
So, and the title track Diamond Dogs is a great song. However, for me, and I mentioned this earlier, and it actually wasn't the song Let's Dance. It was the song Modern Love off of Let's Dance that could have been the anthem for the 20s, because the opening intro, because that is the first track on the album, the intro line is, I know when to go out, know when to stay in. So I always loved Modern Love.
Yeah. And I should say also, I did kind of mix up a little bit of the lyrical themes between Life on Mars and Changes. Changes was dealing a little bit more of like all the struggles that he was going through to try to find his own identity. But you could argue that a little bit of that seeped into Life on Mars, considering it was his FU to Frank Sinatra's My Way. So kind of similar themes. You can argue Hungry Dory kind of took on that whole thing too.
Right.
Literally so many songs.
Oh yeah.
You can pick though.
So what I do like about, like you mentioned, the entire Let's Dance thing and Modern Love is it really is that intro to Bowie becoming very much so easier to listen to, because Space Oddity, if you're not ready for it, it's what the hell am I listening to?
You know what though? I would argue that Space Oddity is arguably weird and accessible at the same time.
It's
I think it's
weird, but
to me it's the perfect song. That and Life on Mars is the perfect David Bowie song.
If you play it for somebody who's not ready for that, they're not going to actively be like, "Oh, this is great." It takes some getting used to really appreciate what it is.
Maybe maybe I'm just an interesting choice, because I remember being the first time I heard it, just like being not expecting what to expect or not knowing what to expect, and just being blown away by how beautiful of a story it told.
Right, but if
from start to finish.
But if you're listening to it from the perspective of you're listening for a great song and you're not listening to it from a story perspective, I think that's where some people are going to get tripped up. But either way,
I also think of I think many different things with Space Oddity, but another thing that sometimes pops in my head whenever I hear it, especially the clap part, is did you ever see the movie Mr. Deeds?
yeah.
With Adam Sandler in the plane just starting to sing that song because he's the first time he's in an airplane. He's just like, oh my God, I feel like Major Tom. This is Major Tom. And then like he gets to the clapping part and he's like, dan, 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 dan. And then the pilots turn around just do, 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 do. I just always remember the pilots just turning, do, do, do.
So, and I'm just going to mention this before we move on. One of the other things that really killed this song for me is William Shatner in 2011
doing a cover of it.
Did the cover on his Seeking a Major Tom album. And it's just, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I didn't listen to it. I refused to. I just couldn't.
It was kind of a farce that I heard it because we were in my radio station. Like you always get like the free CDs, and it's like this came in very unexpected. It's like William Shatner, the hell is this? And we listened to it as like, So moving on. So another one of my honorable mentions is Geanie.
Yeah, great song.
Great song, but what makes it brilliant, and I didn't realize this until this morning, is listening to it. It's a sped up blues riff. So blue, Geanie. Like blue jeans, like you wear blue jeans. I just thought it was a great play on it. So that could just be me, but it's still a great song regardless.
It's a great.
The Man Who Sold the World.
Yeah.
Most people.
We talked about how Nirvana's Unplugged cover of that is one of the best covers of all time.
Yes.
And it's true. It's a great song.
But people, I think, especially around our age, associate Nirvana with The Man Who Sold the World instead of David Bowie.
It's
but
true.
without the initial great songwriting of David Bowie and just the effects on his voice on that song, it's set up for a great cover. So there's that one. And then finally, this was in my top 3 until I really started to get into Fame. Because this is really one of the very first songs that I ever associated to David Bowie. And this was me like as an early teenager in the 90s, hearing Bowie in his techno era on the Earthling album with I'm Afraid of Americans.
Yeah, that's a fun, like, this is what 90s era Bowie sounded like. Didn't Trent Reznor produce that, or did he just do a remix
He did a remix of it. But what made it, and he was also in the video for it.
Yes, he was. I remember him being in the video for it.
But what makes it interesting is in the context of the rest of the album could very much so be summed up as B-side Prodigy sounding songs. This very much so takes something that Bowie had a concept on, tweaks it by somebody who really knows what he's doing in that area, and shows the potential that Bowie has if Bowie wasn't the one doing probably the production and all of the work on it himself, and let somebody else in to help. And Trent Reznor just makes this song just a dark, eerie, technological trip of a song. And I think that if you listen to the other remixes on the expanded edition, it really shows kind of how far the song came. But the album prior to this, and the name is escaping me at the moment, but it was also kind of like his first foray into this, and Earthling was his second. The first album really was a stripped back version. He pushed it harder on Earthling and was kind of going further off into that Prodigy direction, but there was already so much of that, and the Prodigy was already so big that I don't think Bowie needed to do it, but he did it anyway.
That's kind of why I mentioned this kind of earlier, how when Bowie and Nine Inch Nails did the joint tour, there was a lot of people who considered it to be like the passing of the baton. And even historically, at first, like the first few dates, because Nine Inch Nails came on first, they were red hot at the time. They were seeing a lot of people leaving before Bowie even came on stage. So that's why you actually have video of David Bowie and Trent Reznor doing Hurt together, because they tricked people into staying so that Nine Inch Nails closed with Hurt, but David Bowie came out, sang it, and then segued into his own set so that they can get as many people to stay there to watch it. Mm-hmm. So, and I kind of think part of the reason was not that his music was irrelevant, but because a lot of what he was doing at the time was so electro inspired and dark electro inspired.
It's just weird.
Yeah. For better or worse.
So
So
That's it.
here's a famous Zach proposal for a final three. So I think without question, Space Oddity. I mentioned this earlier. Space Oddity is definitely in.
Okay, so we're
final
still
three.
talking about the Bowie version, right? Not the William Shatner version.
The Bowie version, yes.
Okay.
William Shatner version will be in a different kind of list involving crap.
In a different tin can.
In a different tin can. Oh, okay. Nice. Nice one. So definitely Space Oddity. It's just the perfect storytelling song. Second, you mentioned about how impactful the song Heroes was. Maybe not musically his best, but like it definitely had the biggest impact. When you hear it, you think about overcoming hurdles and obstacles for peace, for love, for like that. Also an amazing song that told a story. Heroes is a great example of how art can actually make an impact.
Yes.
And how it can stir emotions to actually make a difference and change. Yeah, I think Heroes needs to be in the final three as well. Which means, and this is where I kind of want your input on.
Yeah, this is a hard list to do.
I think the final spot, because I'd like to have one of my songs on the list, selfishly. It should be either Life on Mars or Let's Dance. And I'm kind of leaning towards Let's Dance, even though I think Life on Mars is actually a better song.
I would say if you're going down the road of what is a Bowie fan more likely to like, Life on Mars is probably that.
I think you have to do. I mean, I think as much as Let's Dance does an amazing job at capturing a different aspect of Bowie, I think Life on Mars is the better song. Even though you can make the argument it's similar to Space Oddity and the structure and how, but Life on Mars, right?
Life on Mars.
It should be Life on Mars. It's just because I feel like Space Oddity and Life on Mars are the two songs I would say, if you've never heard Bowie, these are true great songs to start off with, because they're going to at least give you an idea of what you can expect on a lot of different songs, and a lot of just they capture his brilliance.
Right. And the themes that you hear on Space Oddity and Life on Mars, you can even hear those impacts up until his last album.
Yeah. Well, even I talked about Ashes to Ashes, even though it's definitely a little bit more of a dancey rock song, there's elements of Space Oddity in there, even with just like the musical, not even just with the lyrical concept, but like even the musicality, you can kind of see how it could live on the same universe or even album as Space Oddity, as different as those songs are.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think the more that we talk about this, the more that I'm comfortable with saying that we can go with Life on Mars.
All right. So in that case, our final three for David Bowie's best songs: Space Oddity, Heroes, and Life on Mars. Do you agree?
Probably not.
Do you disagree? Probably.
Most likely so.
Either way, tell us. Let us know. Let your entire feeling out. Lash us if you want. Tell us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at Epic Footnote. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel to hear more silly podcasts like this, as well as a few cool videos. And thank you so much for listening. Also, thank you so much to Lucky 13 Beard Co. Again, use the code EFP10 at lucky13beardco.com to receive 10% off on beard oils of all types, all smelling types, including ours, though, the Lemmy-inspired beard oil. 10% off, EFP10 code, can't beat that. Also, massive thank you to Rootless Coffee, based out of Flint, Michigan. They really produce some great tasting coffees, and they collaborate with a lot of cool artists, including us at one point, on their own special blends. Go to rootlesscoffee.com, use the code EPICROAST to receive 15% off of your order. Thank you to Rootless Coffee. Thank you, Lucky 13 Beard Co. And thank you all for listening, and we hope you listen to another episode real soon.
It's ground control to Major Tom.